Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second interview on the NARSA podcast. I'm Gary Gillan. I'm your host for today, and I am delighted, more than delighted, to be joined by a man who is as influential to podcasting as Steve Jobs was to everything Apple. A man who was as important to the movement from mainstream media to fan media as Mark Zuckerberg was to the revolution that we now know as Facebook and social media. A man who is as inspirational to Rangers fan content production as the Beatles were to popular music. And the reason that I know all of this is that's exactly what he told me to say just before we started recording. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast founder, Mr. David Edgar. David, thank you very much for joining NARSA today. How are you doing?
Yeah, I was a bit taken aback, but I wondered where you were going with it. To be honest, I thought no, there's got to be a sting in the tail somewhere. So I was almost grateful when the slap in the dish arrived at the end of it. But yes, it's very nice to get the opportunity to talk to everyone. And obviously, I've been hoping to get over to see you the past couple of years, but this bloody pandemic got in the way.
Oh, I know, exactly. And speaking of the pandemic, how has COVID altered your life and your work life in terms of the podcasting?
I think that the main thing for me is that I you know this because we're friends, is that I don't really have a very active social life to begin with. But like everybody else, you miss certain things that you don't get to do anymore. You miss the experience of being with your mates, and that was a big thing we would do as a group, is get together and have a chat about what we were going to do, record stuff together as opposed to virtually. So there's that element. The other thing is maybe a wee bit less easy to qualify, but it's important, I think, is that we've become much more aware of how important the website is for people, just to provide a wee bit of normality and stability. And a lot of people who are maybe on their own, that being on the website, because we were very much a community rather than just we put this out, you listen. People, that's why we've always had the opportunity for people who want to do podcasts to come on and do it. It's always been about that community vibe, and lots of our listeners have got in touch to say that they really it provides 2:30 every day. Out comes the update. 6 o'clock on a Thursday, this show, and having that is helping them with a routine, and it's making them feel connected to other people, because that, I think, is something that's been huge. I know that we look at the effects of this terrible disease that's going about, but I think even for people who maybe haven't been directly touched by it, certainly I know personally, your mental health it can take a real battering, and I don't think that's something that really gets enough attention. So it's a very small part we play in it, but it makes you aware of the responsibility you have. So just little things like, we can't skip the show because people are waiting on it, and it doesn't matter if it's one person that's waiting on it. It's got to go out because that person might be having a really bad day and they're looking forward to this, and we're not going to let them down. So that's probably been the biggest thing for us.
Yeah, definitely, and I think possibly there's a wee bit of a downplay on the importance. I think there's a big reliance and leaning on the content that's coming out, by whom it's delivered by, and things like that. I know certainly even here, 7 hours behind the UK, it's a regular part of my routine as well, and I'm mentally, I think, very healthy and happy and managing to survive this fairly well at my side. But even then, it's still a staple part of my day, and I need and I want and a desire to be able to have that content, to be part of that community and hear the information that everyone else is hearing.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we didn't really realise when we started was the international community, and guys, in North America, Canada, and then Australia, and further afield, Botswana, one of our listeners lives in. And it's about helping people to stay connected to Rangers in that way, and to, what's going on back at home, what are people talking about. And now that that was always there in terms of the international audience, I think occurs even in the domestic one. And it's the same way. I've been very, very fortunate to go to the games this season. I go and I report on it. And while, you'll always get people who are, just get stuck into you for it, basically, and I understand that, because they're like, yeah, jammy, so-and-so. A big part of that is I really feel that there's a responsibility to communicate to people what's going on, and just wee things like recording in the ground so that they can hear, the noises of the stadium and stuff, and just to say to people that, look, I know that you can't come here at the moment, and I don't take it lightly. That's something I think that I always stress to people, that I never ever think, oh, yeah, I'm getting to games. Each one is a real privilege to be at right now, going through this. And there's a bit of me that thinks, I'm kind of representing others here when I come through the door, and that's been very much again at the kind of forefront of my thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. So as I was doing my research, just to make sure that I was prepared for the interview, I did the obligatory Wikipedia search to try and get some poignant and fun facts on you. And I realised that, in fact, you don't actually have a Wikipedia page yet. What's that all about?
I don't really see the point of us having a Wikipedia page. I just don't see it as being really us. I always think of Wikipedia as being for, important things. So I think that, me and my pals talking about football probably doesn't fit into that. But there's, the story of it, I think, is, we find it interesting, but whether other people would or not. But no, it's never been something I've had a particular desire to have. It might sound odd because of, what I do, and I do podcasts and I release them, and clearly if you're doing that, you're sharing your thoughts with people and asking them to listen to them, and doing videos from the game and everything, that you are wanting to, you do want people to pay attention to you. So there's no getting away from the fact that anyone who makes social media posts, there's a wee bit of attention seeking in it. That's why we do it. But at the same time, and this about me, I'm actually quite a shy and quite private person. I'm fine. You can hand me a microphone and tell me to go and stand in front of 1,000 people and entertain them, and I'll do it quite happily. But if you have like a one-on-one with me on a train, I'll be quite awkward and kind of shuffly and looking at my shoes. And I don't know what it is, but it's just part of my personality. So so when people say things like, hey, do you want to do a Wikipedia? Well, no, not really. Why would anybody be interested? Like when you said to me, I'll interview you for this, my first question was, well, why? And and initially I thought somebody must have let him down and he needs a replacement quickly. But then you said it's later in the week, and I was like, all right, okay. But it's a very cool thing that we've done to get to talk about it, and certainly happy to share it. But it's just me. I don't know why. I think people meet me and they're expecting me to be like maybe I'm on air, and then I think I'm a bit of a disappointment to them because I'm quite just a wee kind of reasonably quiet guy for winning, and I think that sometimes they're like, you're that confident when you're up on the stage, and I was like, yeah, but I'm imagining you all naked. That's probably it. But it seems rude to do it one-on-one.
I hear you. So just as an introduction to get into the content of the interview, can you just give us a wee bit of background about yourself, your history as a Rangers fan, and including, I'm really interested in the journey that you took that manifested itself into your tenure with the Rangers Supporters Trust.
Well, as I say, I'm from Kilwinning originally, and if you grow up here, you're a Rangers fan. That's just it, right? It's this is still a weird thing to me when people will say, "Oh, my pal's a Celtic fan," and I'm like, "Oh, and no, I'm not being judgy. It's just not down here." It doesn't happen. You just don't meet people. Everybody just supports Rangers, and it's sort of always been in my life because of that. Like early memories, I remember I've got very, very early memories. I'd be about 4 of watching the Scottish Cup final between Rangers and Dundee United in 1981. So there's always been that. It's just always been there and always been a part of my life. And then got taken to my first game, 1986, against Dundee United, and it probably won't surprise you. I was quite a kind of precocious wee kid, and kind of the type of kid that I don't like, one of the annoying mouthy ones that sits and wants to talk to the adults. But I was always really just, I love football. I'll watch any game that's on the telly, Icelandic second division. I'm like, yes, great. So I've always been like that, and I've always been very interested in the history of the game and the history of my club and everything. So yeah, it went from there, and then it was just, for me, it was the one thing that stuck throughout any different phases of my life. Being a wee boy and obsessed with it, and then you're a teenager and you start to notice that girls have got these things on their chest, and you start to listen to music, and you start to get other temptations that are put in front of you. And your relationship, like, I was a monster of a lovely wee boy, but a terrible teenager. But the one place that I could still, go and almost and be normal, and it was Ibrox. It was still something that throughout that me and my dad always had. We could be rowing like hell in the house. My fault, incidentally. I'm at the age now where I realise my parents were right. But and to anyone listening to this who's young, they are. Trust me. Just shut up. Not they are. They're right. Okay, your mum and dad are right. And I could still go to Ibrox though and be, we still had that. That never changed. And then it's just always been there. Relationships have come and gone, jobs come and go. You move about around the country, but Ibrox has always been this one constant staple in my life. And for the trust thing, basically what happened was it really grew out of follow, the website more than the fanzine. But in the late 90s, like, a lot of people, I submitted a few articles to Mark Dingwall at Follow, and he published them. And the magazine was very influential on me at the time. There was a lot of stuff in it that I was reading that I was like, yes, I agree with this, and stuff like that began to chime with me. So from that, the website kicked off 1999, I think, Follow, the message board first started up. And at first, there was probably only about 50 or 60 of us on it, all different age groups, all different types. And from that sprung, meetups and nights out and whatnot. And you got to know people. And because it was guys who were all, if you like, sort of engaged in what you might call the activist side of it, I sort of get drawn into that a wee bit. And then when the trust first started, I was at the meeting when it started, but I didn't join up because I wanted to see, I wasn't quite on the same page as them then. But events, under Murray sort of pushed it. And then they asked me one day, look, would you join up on the board? And I said, sure, basically just genuinely for like the first year, just to hand out leaflets and stuff, and at RST dances, will you, stand on the door and take the tickets? It was just to help out. But then the press side of it, they needed somebody to do it. And as Mark said to me, you're a mouthy wee shite, you can do it. So, which I was back then. And and from there, everything that happened. The difficulty we had back then is that we knew that where Murray was taking the club was not going to be a good place. Mm-hmm. And we were trying to warn everybody, including Murray himself, that this was happening. And it just, people didn't want to hear it. And I understand that because it wasn't good news. And I don't think anybody, Christ, I didn't anticipate how bad it would get. I never thought that we'd end up where we would end up. So did that for a few years, and then it's pretty wearing when you're doing that. That's something I'd say to anybody that I know it's a bit annoying when you've got this, unelected guy. Well, unelected by you, but he seems to have been made the kind of de facto fans chief. I always hated that term, fans chief, like as if I'd been, we did a big vote on it and stuff. But it is annoying when you've got this person who's there and he's constantly, giving his opinion. And so I got fed up with me at the end up. I was fed up with it. Never mind how it must have been for other people who were non-trust members. So when it finished in 2010, as you know, guys, I don't drink. I'm a recovered alcoholic. And when all that, when that came to a head and I got sober and everything, I had a total kind of lifestyle change. I changed careers. I changed my life around, and I said to them at the trust, I said, look, I'm going to step down because this isn't good for me, doing this, frigging, threat through the post and emails and stuff and, abusive phone calls. So I decided to step down. And then when I did, that's when I thought I'll start the podcast. And the reason for that was purely because, one, I heard other club podcasts and I thought they're really good. Somebody should do something like that for us. And then it was a mate of mine said, well, you do it then, rather than moan about that there isn't one. Get off you, but you've spent 5 years telling people, don't expect other people to do something for you, which was true. At the trust, we'd say join up and help, rather than just say, oh, somebody should do something about this, you be part of the change. So he said, so rather than you saying this would be, go and do it. And we started Heart and Hand. And the big thing at the start was about what I wanted it to be is the way that we are portrayed, and you'll know this in Scotland, and especially in the media, is that Rangers fans are very pole-faced and we're very miserable types, and it's the old Calvinist stereotype. Whereas Celtic fans are all witty, arty, up for a bit of the crack, that sort of thing. And I know that that's bollocks, right? And I knew that was just complete and utter rubbish. That Rangers fans were funny and I loved going to the games and sitting on the buses and talking to my pals and being in the away end, and the patter was fantastic. So I just wanted to kind of show, if you like, see that stereotype about us, it's not true, and this is more what we're really like. And I think that was why people sort of cottoned onto it quickly, because we didn't really have it, and we still don't have a massive voice in the traditional media. They don't really want us, they don't want Rangers fans and Rangers viewpoints in the media. It's not how it's been slanted for the past 15, 20 years. So that was it. We just decided, well, do you know what? If you're not going to do for us what we want, we'll do it ourselves.
Exactly. So just before we go into the podcast stuff, I just had a couple of quick questions on the trust stuff. What would you consider to be the biggest success or the thing you're most proud of through your tenure with the trust?
See, the problem was that at my time at the trust, we failed on the main thing, which was to try and stop the slide, into the financial abyss. And we didn't manage it because we didn't persuade people. And looking back, a big part of that was me, and I it's something I approached myself for because I was too abrasive. I didn't understand, what it's like when you're in I was in my mid-20s. I thought I was God, and because I felt I was right, I thought that was enough. That way, it's like, I have a cause. And when you're like that, you're a zealot. And people don't like zealots because they're annoying. And I was very much like, look, this is all happening. And people would say, well, actually, I don't agree. And rather than try to persuade them, I would shout at them.
Right.
And that never works. And I think we see it more in the world now, actually, sadly, that people, they don't listen to other people, and they would just shout and expect people. Nobody's going to change their mind because you tell them they're stupid, which I learned much, much too late, unfortunately. I think, we did a lot of good stuff in terms of local charities. We did a lot of stuff in terms of recognition for ex-players. I'm very, very proud of the Sam English trophy that was donated by the Trust, which goes to the top scorer every year.
Yeah.
And I think it was important to kind of bring Sam English back into Rangers history. And I think the other thing we did was that we showed people that you can organise and galvanise and be a part of something. Because I think Rangers fans up to that point maybe thought that was more of a Celtic thing, that they do that, we don't protest and we don't get annoyed. That's them. And I think that we sort of demonstrated actually, no, that's not the case. And I think that kind of opened the door a wee bit for things like Rangers First and for things like, the Fighting Fund and all of the things that followed since, and maybe even Club 1872 is a sort of direct descendant of the Supporters Trust, and I think that we were the first organisation to do that. But we made a lot, and me personally made a lot of mistakes, things we did wrong, things we did really well. I mean, we built the membership up at one point to over, I think, about 15,000, and a lot of that was, down to, like, I could physically point to appearances I made in the radio, and there'd be a spike in membership the next day.
Yeah.
But again, the big error that I made is that there comes a point where you need to stop preaching that rather than going out, and you need to be patient, and you need to show people what your case is. And I don't think up until it was too late that I did that, and that's a regret.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my second question. Was there anything that you look back on and you think, that was a miss? I think, just in terms of
definitely
getting out your
definitely
own way to a point.
Yes, that's a brilliant description of it. That it was just this, as I say, that young and full of passion, and in my case, drink. And you think that you think that everything you say is golden at that age, and then I realise now, looking back, that what I had to do, and I probably still wouldn't have succeeded, by the way, because this is the other thing, that people didn't want to hear it. It wasn't a very sexy message, to be honest. And you can't ever really take on the club. People will default to backing the club, right? Understandably, that people will default to backing the club because that's who they support. And if you've got, in my case, if you've got this wee guy that you don't know, who's very loud and a bit annoying, telling you that the club's headed to disaster, and then you've got David Murray, who you've known for years, he's the chairman of Rangers, who you like and you want to like, and he's telling you, actually, no, he's lying, everything's okay. Of course you're going to believe him. Of course you are. And what I should have done was demonstrate and say, well, look, here are the finances, and look at the, this is what's happened in terms of players being sold and stuff. Whereas I think that, I remember one time Walter Smith said after we played St Johnstone in a League Cup semi, things are going to get worse. The bank is running the club, and people think we're going to get to summer and be okay. It's not going to be okay. That's a quote. That's what Walter said. And the next day, people were saying, I wonder what he means there. He's sending a message. And I'm like, no, he means that we're, the F word.
Yeah.
And it was, and it was that I couldn't get my head round. I was like, he said, that's literally Walter Smith is telling you that this is the case. But I realise now that because I was so invested in it, for a lot of people, that they quite rightly, football fans shouldn't have to care about balance sheets. Should they have to care about the crap we've had to care about for the past 15 years? And I think that it's like everything, but at the time I had the energy, Gary. Now I think I might have the insight, but you don't get one at the same time as the other. And back then I had the energy to go all day and argue my case, but I didn't have the brains.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Excellent. That's terrific. Thanks very much for that. So back to the podcast. So during my time listening to the podcast, which dates back to before the convention here in Calgary in 2018, so about four or so years, the podcast has evolved significantly into more of a formal business, while still keeping its core roots as Rangers related content for the most part. There are other things there, of course, as well. So can you tell us just a wee bit about if it's okay to call them this, like the Heart and Hand founding fathers, and how you've managed to grow the team and content delivery without losing the quality, the camaraderie, just the genuine staunchness of where it started from?
Yeah, when it started, it was initially me and my pals. So that made it, because I wanted it to sound like a conversation in, the Neptune Social Club. And it literally was just the guys I'd be sitting talking to in the Neppy. So there was that. And then, it grew over the years. But again, it was always people I was friendly with that were on it. So when it started, we had me and Big Scott and Mark and Hoggy and Cammy and just all guys I knew from the trust. And I remember I went back to FF, and one of the things about that was out of that came, Hoggy was one of the founders of the Blue Order. Cammy was on the trust board and did the Club Deck Loyal. And so it was all these guys who'd all done a bit of fan activism but had kind of moved on. And, we plugged away, through the lower league years. A lot of it was having a laugh, because if we didn't laugh, we would cry,
Definitely.
So I knew that if people were coming on to listen to us for 45 minutes after having, literally 3 news stories a day for 3 years that just sucked the life right out of you as a Rangers fan, the last thing we needed was me, with oh God, it's all gone to hell. The other thing about it was, you mentioned staunchness, and that, we have a laugh and a joke about it, but one of the things is we were never ever going to be on our knees, and we were never ever going to do, and we still won't, we'll never do this, is what I call the Arsenal fan TV thing, which is come laugh at our pain, which is, you can do big numbers doing that, because you get fans of other clubs that will come and listen to you if you have a breakdown on air, or if you have, a meltdown, and it's really funny for people who don't support Rangers, who don't like Rangers. I'll never do that. I'll shut it down before that happens. And that was always something we were very conscious of. We were very proud of who we were and what we were, and we wanted that to come across as well. When we moved, I decided that we would move it to pay, as well as keep doing the free ones. We'll always do the free ones. It will never ever just be subscription only. But people, I could see that the way podcasts had evolved, that people, would maybe be interested in this, that we could do a wee bit more. And I had ideas for things like history shows and the Daily Update, which is the biggest show that we do. It's an idea I've had since I was a wee boy, which was, wouldn't it be great if there was just a show every day that was all the Rangers news? Yeah. And that, and 20 minutes, just, this is what's in the papers, this is what people are talking about, these are the rumours. No, we don't want to be, we're not Sky Sports News, we don't want to break stories or anything like that. That's not what we do. But just, if you like, almost a compendium of that. And that was an idea. So decided that we would do that. And again, people have said, you charge for it, so you make money off it. And I thought, well, yeah, I do, but we do a lot of work on it. I mean, it is a full-time job, and I'd love to be able to do it for nothing, but I can't. It's not possible. So the idea was, if we get 1,000 people, paying £2 a month, then I'd save my money, and I'd kind of, I'm not rich, but I'm in an all right position, basically, if, to work. My plan was, when I left my last job, I took a voluntary redundancy from my last job, and my plan was to do this and then do some contracting as well every so often, and try and relax a wee bit, because I've got some health issues, so it was about managing that as well. And it just exploded, and straight away it was bigger than we ever imagined it to be. So where it then came to, in terms of getting other people in, like I said earlier, I knew Rangers fans were talented, and I also knew that the pathway to the media for them wasn't open. So my sort of idea was that there's all these amazing people and stories out there that aren't getting heard, and that's not fair. So what we always did want to do, and we said this right at the start, was, if you've got an idea for a show but you don't know how to do it, then come to us, because I can show you how to do it. That's not a problem. And the other thing about it is we can sort of lend you our audience, which is, you can do the pod on our site for a couple of months. People will get to know you, and that'll give you a wee bit of a helping hand. So it was almost like the idea at first was to be an incubator. And what I thought would happen is people would come, they would do a show with us for a few months, and then they would go off on their own. And the eventual plan is that people never need to listen to, the biased anti-Rangers media, that they could get their news from the club, and they could get their, their analysis and their entertainment from fan media, and that was the plan. But then what happened is that the people that came stayed, because I think they saw that what we were capable of doing together was bigger than what we were capable of doing apart, which is always the way with the Rangers support, I think. And that was what happened. So in terms of making sure, though, I make people who are in the group socialise. I make them, be in WhatsApp groups and talk to each other, because otherwise they're not going to sound like they know each other when they come to do shows. They're not going to sound like there's relationships. They're not going to sound like they're pals. And that was never the idea. But again, what we've always done is keep the door open. I was talking to, it's funny you say that, I was talking to a fella last night, because I always want to make sure we've got representation from as many different areas of the support as possible. And we've got nobody from Northern Ireland, because our last Northern Irish pundit buggered off to become the head of comms at Rangers. So it left a Northern Irish hole in our schedule. And so I've been speaking to a guy who got in touch, and he said, look, you need a voice from Ulster. I'm your man. I'm like, perfect, great. Let's talk. Let's see what your ideals are. And they've got to be good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, if people are kind of, they're not entertaining or they've nothing to say, then I'm not going to put them on air just to be nice. People are, at the end of the day, we keep the cost very low. I mean, you can get on Heart and Hand for 50p a week, and there'll always be a low price point for it. And even throughout the pandemic, what we've said to people is that if you lose your job or your hours are cut or whatever, tell us and we'll make it free till you're back your feet. Now, that's not going to change their lives, but it might help a tiny wee bit throughout it, because I've been unemployed and I know what it's like when you're sitting in the house, wondering. Something to break up your day is useful. And that's what we'll continue to do. It'll never be a closed shop. It'll never be it's just us, and screw everybody else. And I do think that we're a gang, but I think we're a gang of 30 podders and 5,000 plus listeners. That's what we do. And the free one, again, it does very well. In a good week gets over 100,000 people listening to it, and that's fantastic. And if people are kind enough to give us an hour of their week to listen to us, then that's great. And that might be enough for them. But for those who do want a wee bit more, then I want to always make sure that there's a cheap alternative to, because I don't listen to Scottish media, and I miss the Scottish media, Gary. I used to see in the 90s, I used to love, Radio Scotland, and then, the phone-ins and buying my Daily Record and my Sun and my Herald. I used to love all that, and I'm sad that doesn't exist for us anymore. But we can learn about it, or we can do something about it, and that's what Heart and Hand does.
Yeah, exactly that. So for anybody that wants a wee bit more information and maybe doesn't know about Heart and Hand right now, encourage them to visit heartandhand.co.uk and get information from there.
Absolutely. Like I say, if you search anywhere you get podcasts, wherever you get your regular podcast, you just go to search for Heart and Hand, and the free one, there's 2 a week that deal mainly with, the games and analysis and stuff like that. They'll be there. But if you want, on the site, we've got tons of other stuff. We do historical shows where we'll go back and we'll look at, for example, we've done at this stage now, it must be up to about 200 hours. These series of shows where it's every single match and month that Dick Advocaat was in charge, every single month that Big Ek was in charge, every single month, sadly, that Paul Le Guen was in charge. And now we're midway through Walter's second spell, and that comes out once a week, and we'll go through other games. We've got people that will look at players from the past, etc. We've got special games that we'll look at. We've got a lot of current affairs stuff. So as I say, daily news show, we do a post-match from the game, a report from the games this season. We do tactical breakdowns where we've got a professional coach who will break it down from a tactical point of view. And then we've got the other thing, and this is probably the funnest thing that happened in my time doing it, is people started to ask us to talk about other stuff. And I was like, really? And they were like, yeah, you're entertaining, and sometimes we need a break from football. So we do shows on TV and music and cinema and wrestling and just anything at all that people might be vaguely interested in. I think it's fun. I think the biggest thing I would say about the Patreon site is a retention rate is something like 90%, which means that once people come, they stay. And I think that's probably the biggest testament to what you get. You get a lot. We've actually had people leave because they said there's too much content, which strikes me as odd because I'm just like, you don't need to listen to all. I don't. So you don't need to. But I want it to be like a staunch Netflix where, there might be 5 shows in a day. You might only be interested in one of them, but there'll be something there. Right, great if you want to listen to all 5, but you might only want to listen to one of them, and that's cool. So long as you get something for your money, then I'm happy. So that's what there'll be podders you love and there'll be podders you don't like, and you can avoid them. And that's the idea, that you can go and listen to it as and when at your leisure, and that's the idea, and hopefully we'll continue to grow and push, because I think that we are having an impact now on the traditional media in Scotland, and they don't like it, but they messed it up for themselves, so no guilt from that. And I think that the thing is, that if you listen to us, if we criticise the team, it's because we are hurting and we're feeling it because we're Rangers fans. If we tell you something, it's because we believe it because we're Rangers fans. And I don't think any other, or I think other fan media do that, but I don't think any other traditional media can offer you that. And some of them don't even try.
Yeah, agreed. That's actually a great segue into the fan media piece. And you'd mentioned it briefly earlier today. They're just talking about the press status that you managed to enjoy, to get to see some of the games and evolve the content, evolve the real timeness of the content from the matches and things like that. So in terms of, I know how you feel about Stevie G, and I can't imagine what it must have been like the first time you got to ask him a question at one of the press conferences. But how did that come about, and are you enjoying it?
Yeah, I never wanted that. I didn't want us to take, press passes and stuff like that for years, and I spoke often enough about it. And one of the reasons I spoke often enough about it was I thought, well, I'm committing myself to it now. So even if I change my mind, we can't do it. So, and then what happened was that Club 1872 actually pressed the club to allow a few fan media organisations in. And I went back to the boys and girls in Heart and Hand and said, look, should we do this? And they're like, yeah, do it. And I was like, nah, I don't want it. It doesn't feel right. We're not doing it. Right? Democracy in action. Yeah. And then it was one of them actually put it to me that they said, we're very democratic in Heart and Hand, so long as it's what I wanted us to do. Well, we are top-down democracy, can I put it that way? I listen to them, and then I make my mind. What is it Brian Clough said? We have a chat, and then I tell them why I'm right. That's a bit. But one of them said to me a very good point. He said, David, is this based on your relationship with Rangers right now or your old relationship with Rangers, which was very adversarial? I'd grown up really not liking, the arguing with the board. And then, obviously it was the Spivs, and God, you're not going to, everybody hated them. And what they said was, look, you do have people paying for this. This is a service you can offer that you are choosing not to offer. And I kind of hummed and hawed, and then I thought, and again, David, one of our podders, now works for Rangers, so there was a relationship there anyway. And I thought, give it a try. What I was worried about was that they would try to, I don't want anything from the club. I never did. And again, because I've grown up in that area, people used to say to me, you just want a job with Rangers. I'm like, what, by going out and slagging David Murray? How do you think that's likely to get me a job with Rangers? Right? So you'll always get that, blazer chaser, and you just want this and you just want that. And it's generally people projecting onto you. It's not anything you've done, and it's hurtful, but there's nothing you can do about it. And I've learned to live with it over the years. you think you're Mr. Rangers. No, mate, I don't, but you clearly do. Don't project your insecurity onto me. But it's just human nature, and as I say, you learn to live with it. But I thought I'll give it a try and see what happens with it. My worry was that they'll expect something, that they've now got something to take away from me. Do you know what I mean? And that was always my worry, that Rangers would come and say, well, we need you to say this, or we expect you to say that, and they genuinely don't. This week as we're recording this, Gary, Rangers were, I thought, abysmal against Hamilton on Sunday, and we recorded a show immediately after the game, and I was raging, right, given the way the game had ended. And we criticised the team, we got stuck right in. Nobody from Rangers gets in touch with you to say you were bang out of order there and you can't come in. What they do, and this is with all the media, is if you say something that isn't true, and by that what I mean is if you say, this player was out on the town doing X and Y and it's bollocks, then they will pull you up. But that's fair. I don't have a problem with that. Don't tell lies, and they don't. So they don't ever ask you to do, certain things. The press conferences, the Stevie G thing, it's weird, because I'm a fan. I'm not a journalist. I wouldn't pretend to be a journalist. And he's Steven Gerrard, on top of being the Rangers manager, which commands respect anyway from us. Is he has a presence similar to your good friend Walter Smith. That's something that that if you've ever been in a room with Walter or Steven Gerrard, and they're both, they're perfectly pleasant people, but you just have this, they have this underlying air of, do not mess with me, exactly. and you just, just not to. And he has that, and he has that ability and that. And, people will say to me about, your questions are softball, or why didn't you ask him about this? And I'm like, yeah, you do it. Yeah. Mr. Big Boys, you sit in front of the Rangers manager and say to him, why are you picking Brandon Barker? He's shite, right? You do that. And again, maybe I've got a wee bit more sympathy for because people do get on about the questions that you ask at press, and I do get it because they are repetitive, and there is a lot of the same stuff that's mentioned there. But you've got one question, so you can't do the interview thing of, you sit down and you build up to something and you maybe go in different. You can't do that. All you can do is ask this one static question, and a lot of the press are doing it because they're trying to get a line out of them. I'm not. I just genuinely. That's why I always try to talk about football with them, because a lot of the questions aren't really about the game. They're more about the kind of soap opera stuff. And I try to talk about actual football just to be a bit different, because otherwise there's no point in me being there. Like people said, why didn't you ask him about referees? And it's like, well, because all the press guys are doing that, so you don't need me to do that. And if I'm there and I'm just doing the same as them, there's really no point in me being there. And I try not to do it. But like I say, they've always been very decent with me, very respectful. They've told me not to, lick his faces often. And I try very hard. But I'll be honest, I was luckiest guy in the world. I was at the Old Firm game on January the 2nd.
Yeah.
And afterwards, that was the first time that Rangers had done a pre. Usually up to that point, the manager would come to the side of the park and you'd go down and do, and the press guys gather around him and you ask a question each and then he goes away again. But that was the first day Rangers had put it back into the press office, and they did like a kind of random draw of media people to get in, and I was one of them, and I was fortunate enough to be in there. Now I'm sitting there and Rangers have just won 1-0 against Celtic, right, to put us in absolute pole position to win the league for the first time in 10 years.
Yes.
And I need to A, ask a question, and B, that question can't be, shut right, love you. And it's not as easy as it looks, right?
I bet it's not.
that's all you want. You just want to run up and hug him and go, yes, well done, that was magic.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. I love you. And you do, and it's very difficult to sit there and go, so Stephen, can you tell us about your tactics for this? It's hard because I just, I'm on the phone with my dad before I go in there, and we're going, Champions, we're going to win it, and you've got to go in and be quite calm. But he is a very, as I say, purposeful character. He does have a huge presence. He's a guy that, even if you'd never watched a game of football, you'd notice Steven Gerrard when he walked into a room. He has that about him, and as I say, the way Graham Souness does, the way Walter Smith certainly does, and again, it's just about trying to, ask things that I want to know. That's basically it. It's like, if I've been talking to my pals and they've said, I wonder why we do this, I'll go, well, that's a good one, and I'll ask. But there are, if I ask Steve, people ask you about, do the club tell you not to ask it? And no, they don't. But there's some things just not to. If I sit and ask Steven Gerrard a deeply technical question about his tactics, he's going to laugh at me because he's gonna, who the hell is this guy asking me about this? So you have to balance the human nature of it as well. And there are times that I probably ask something that doesn't come out right. It maybe sounded great in my head and it's maybe not ideal. But again, I do listen when people say to me, could you ask him this or could you ask him that? But sometimes people get offended. Like a guy said, can you ask him why we don't shoot from outside the box more? And I'm like, no, not really. And he's like, well, why not? Are you scared to ask him? And I'm like, because if I ask him that, he's going to A, look at me like I'm stupid, and then B, he's going to say, you think we don't try to shoot from outside the box? And I'm going to stammer and say, well, maybe we should do it more often. And he'll say, we've scored X amount of goals this season. Do you think, is that not good enough? Can you see what we're trying to do? Do you honestly think I tell my players not to? Because he's a human being. And that is maybe what people, when they hear and they think, oh, Edgar asking a softball question there, that's a big part of it. Is just you do have to be aware that on a human level, what people will and won't answer to, and I think that again, I'm very conscious. I've never worked in professional football. I'm not a coach. I don't pretend to know it in its depth of level. So for me, it's just more just fan questions, and that's what I try to put to him.
Well, that's exactly right. I remember you and I chatted after the first interview that you did, and I think I'd put on the text, here's my synopsis of the press conference. Alfredo Morelos. And there was about a dozen Alfredo Morelos, and then you asked them, what preparations have been done for the weekend's game or something football related, and then it was Alfredo Morelos, and it was just incredible to hear that, and then have your eyes opened a wee bit to the bizarre factions and fashions that seem to go with the press conferences. Depending on the
Christ knows what the Scottish press are going to do when Alfredo Morelos moves, because they're going to be lost. They I've seen the manager asked about him when he's not played, in a post-match press conference, that Alfie hasn't been in the squad. And that be the question, and you can see him going, that's your, we've just beat this team 4-0, we've scored some lovely goals. Do you know why I talk about that? And again, that's, they're after different things to me. So for me, I do very consciously try, and that might mean, that people get annoyed because they think, well, this is the key issue that I'm interested. That's the other thing, is people want you to ask what they want you to ask, and it's like, the only way you're ever going to be satisfied with what I ask is if you send me the questions. But for me, I'll always try and be respectful of it. Like if there's a press conference ahead of a game, I try and ask about the game. If there's a press conference after a match, I try and ask about the match that's just happened. And I just think that there's a kind of bit of, that's just respect, really, because I don't think that's the time, to ask him about something totally unconnected. And people will disagree with that, and that's cool, but you have the traditional press there, and they'll do that. So you don't really need me to do it. You know, I think I should do something that wouldn't get asked otherwise.
No, exactly, and it's not just because we're mates and I love hearing it all, but it's a breath of fresh air. You can just feel a culture shift within the maturity and savviness of the questions on the back of that sort of stuff, and I've seen a modification just in these last 3 or 4 months as it started to bed in a wee bit. So good for you for doing that sort of stuff. So on a NARSA perspective, you played a very significant role in bringing the convention to those who couldn't attend with the work that you did for us back in 2018 here in Calgary for the NARSA convention. How did you enjoy that experience?
Oh, it was amazing. It was just a fantastic trip because, as I say, to be asked, I was very honoured to be asked in the first place, and I'd never been. I'd always meant to go, especially in my wilder days, because I heard you lot can drink, and I think having seen one now, I would have fitted in. But to be asked was one thing, but I wanted to, as you say, to give something back that was useful. And therefore, I did a lot of, as we were there, we did videos and live stuff as well, just so people in Scotland could feel connected to it. But also maybe if they were thinking about taking a trip to an NARSA one year, don't leave it too long the way I did. That was what I wanted to say as well. And if any in the last 2 years has taught us, it's don't put it off, because you never know. Exactly. You never know. And I've learned that a lot through the last couple of years, is if you get the opportunity to do something you want to do, then do it. And I wanted to show people what it was, and it's just so much fun. You're surrounded by these amazing loyal bears, and there's events that are magic. You're in a really cool place, especially if it's your hometown, but for me it was a really amazing cool place. But and you get to see things you've never seen. I went up the tower and gazed at the side, and that is something that's seared in my memory. Just an amazing experience, and then just getting to meet really cool people that I'm now friends with, like you and Andy and David and all the other guys, and it's just that. And we talk a lot about the Rangers family, and we talk a lot about the international aspect of that, of the club, etc., etc. Well, this is it in action. Exactly. This is it. Actually, this is a part of it. This is you standing there, taking over a wee, corner in North America or Canada in that instance, and being surrounded by teddy bears and there's RSC badges and tops everywhere, and there's a sing song, and you really feel there's something powerful in that. In the same way that there's a power in going to a game and being where your friends are. There's a power about being thousands of miles from Ibrox and being surrounded by like-minded bears, and of course because people travel for it, not just from here, but all over the US, and they're all meeting up. And it sounds like a cliche, but I went there, and 5 days later I left with loads of new pals that I'm still in touch with years later. And I remember after we beat Celtic for the first time, last year, sorry, we beat Celtic at Parkhead for the first time.
Yeah.
In God knows how long, right? It was a big day, and I know the season panned out badly for there on in, but it was a breakthrough for us, and I think we've taken it on into this season. Exactly. Going there and beating them so easily the last time we went to Parkhead. So my phone was lit up and I was talking away to you, to Andy, and to guys in Canada and guys in North America, to Brian in California, and then guys I met when I was over at ORSA, and guys in Australia, and I'm chatting away to them, and that just elevates it to a level that I'd never experienced before. I was just thinking, wow, this result is all around the world. This joy that we're all a part of, and it makes you more aware. I think obviously we're all aware of how special the club is, but I think sometimes we play down how important that fan aspect of it is. The being a supporter and having the Rangers family around you the only thing that kept Rangers a big club at times in the last 10 years was us, the supporters.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you're a supporter who lives in Copeland Road or a supporter that lives up a mountain in Nepal. We're all connected and we're all part of it. And I think if you get the opportunity to go to a NARSA convention and to feel yourself a part of that and to meet up with loads of people and to experience that, I think that tells you, it'll make you love the club even deeper than it already is. On top of that, you get a holiday, and you get, if you like a drink, then trust me, that you'll be well served. But and it's fun, all of that stuff I'm speaking about from a spiritual point of view. It's fun, right? There's the absent friends football match. There's the golf day. There's the year I was there, Stuart Robertson was there, so you got to do a Q&A with him, and that's interesting. You get to hear more for your club. Ex-players telling these amazing stories, and all of this combines. You get to do sightseeing and stuff. So you will have fun. I mean, you could go to it even if you weren't a massive Rangers fan or a massive football fan. You'd still have fun. You'd still enjoy it.
Yeah.
But if you are a Rangers fan, you'll have the time of your life.
Oh, I completely agree. I couldn't agree more. And that's not purely from an advert perspective. It's I'd mentioned to somebody just a wee while back that the Vegas convention in 2010, I described to a pal of mine here in Calgary as the best weekend of my life, and for the reasons that you mentioned there, just being on holiday, being away with people you like, making new friendships, getting to stand next to legends, getting to really feel and see the camaraderie and community that goes with being a Rangers fan. It all packaged into this utter glow that lasted, even I'm talking about it here now, coming up for 11 years later. And it was just, and every convention is good, but that one just, it was one of those step back wow moments to go, man, oh man, I get to do this. And it was just, it was brilliant.
Oh man, honestly, it's like Disneyland for Rangers grown-ups. Because it's all lights and colours and events and I don't drink and I had a whale of a time, so it's not even that you need to go and get, if that's your thing, why you're in, but if you do want to go and some of the trip we went sightseeing when we were there, and I mean, good God Almighty, the place is amazing. It's just incredible. We don't have sites like that in Cowan, right? I mean, very few mountains, and it was just getting to do all of that, and I came back just totally, as you say, high as a kite for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I think that having that experience is, like I say, don't. I wouldn't deny myself it now, and I had done for years. I'll go to NARSA one day, that way. I will next year, and next year never came round. And then the last couple of years have shown just go and do it. Just if you can. I mean, and totally understand that it won't be this year, but if you find yourself in the position where you go, actually, I can. And the next one now, unfortunately, is 18 months away.
Yeah,
that's circumstances beyond everybody's control. But I would, for me, it's well, there's something to look forward to whenever I'm feeling a bit low. It's just okay, well, in 18 months' time, we'll be in there will be a big room in Vegas rocking to the sounds of some traditional songs, right? Exactly. And it's gonna be amazing, and that kind of keeps you. It's a nice wee thing to go, right, okay, just push through the day, and better days will be ahead.
Definitely, it's always good to have something to look forward to. You mentioned briefly earlier the ORSA stuff as well, and you did ORSA in 2019 on the back of the 2018 convention. Not to put you on the spot, and I would never ask you to pick a favourite, but what was your favourite between the two of them?
What I'll say is that Australia and New Zealand are very far away.
Yeah, they are indeed.
I don't think I had realised that, because people tell you things like, it's it's 24-hour flight, and you're like, your brain can't take that. And I don't think. What I will say is that, see, having done ORSA, where my trip home from a hotel room to my house took 38 hours. see, having done that, and this is true. See, any journey now under 10 hours is a breeze for me, and I've done a few trips since then to like London, even. I went up north for the Ross County game, and guys, I don't drive, so I was taking public transport, and it took about 6 hours. It was a breeze. Jakey, but the old drunks used to say, "Oh, it's a Jakey sentence." That's what it was. It was just in and out. And NARSA is look, they're very similar because you've got these, you've got just expat bears, and I think something that I really wanted to get across at both, and it was at NARSA that I learned this, is that over here, I think sometimes that there can maybe be a wee bit of, like, when the club do something for NARSA, there's maybe a wee bit of jealousy, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And look, again, human nature. And well, why are we not getting that? We're, and I'm like, because you don't. We get other things over here. We get to go. Normally we are close.
Yeah,
that's a wee extra thing that the club can do for these people who are flying the flag for us thousands of miles from home, expanding, making future generations, spreading the word. It's just a wee extra thing that the club can do, and I think that it helps anybody who maybe has felt like that reappraise that feeling and maybe realise actually these guys sacrifice a shitload to be the level of bear that they are. Getting up in the middle of the night to watch a game, meeting up, because it's easy these days to just sit and say, "Oh, what we'll do is I'll watch it now." If I'm getting out of bed early, I'll just watch it on RTV. But people who go, "No, we're not doing that," because then we'll lose our sense of community. What we're going to do is we're all going to meet up. I don't care if it's 6 a.m. in the morning. We're all going to meet up and we're going to spend this day together. And I found that so inspirational. I really did. And I came back and I actually took a lot of the ideas that I got from NARSA and put them into the, Heart and Hand and stuff. And that for me was a brilliant experience to be able to just understand that, because it is easy when you're over here to go, why is Stuart Robertson going over to their convention? He doesn't come to my supporters club. And it's like, well, no, but we have other things, you over here we have regular RSC meetings, etc. And it's just, once you've experienced it, you would never ask that again. You would always come home and say, no, I get that. And in fact, you would, you push for the club to send a wee bit more. Like, if we did have a convention this year, guys, I would be pushing for them to send the league title.
Oh, 100%. 100%. So for those that don't know, on the topic of the conventions, you were slated to be and confirmed to be our MC for San Francisco NARSA 2020, which was cancelled. And then we extended the invite again to Bramalea 2021, which was also cancelled. I don't know if I'm tempting fate here, and I'm kind of scared to ask, but should we try this again for NARSA 2022 in Las Vegas?
If it gets cancelled, then you never need to talk to me again. No, because then I'm officially a jinx. But let's go on third time lucky. Third time's a charm.
Yeah.
But look, it's going to be amazing. I got married for the second and so far final. I'd like to point that out. I got married in Vegas, so it's a special city for me anyway. And again, just if anybody's swithering about, will I go? Will I book up? It is 18 months. We should be through this by then. All the reports, even the worst case scenarios I've seen have said that we'll be through it by then. And if you can't have a good time in Vegas, well, I don't know.
That's what it is. If you can't have a good time in Vegas, that's the type of person that's going to be on their deathbed saying, "You know what? I spent too much time laughing. I spent way too much time laughing and enjoying myself and enjoying my friends and my family."
Yes, that is exactly it. If you will have a good time on top of everything else that's going to happen. And then, as I say, you'll experience the stuff. I mean, you can hear me and Gary talking about it. We're no, we're middle-aged Scottish men. We don't sound enthusiastic about stuff unless it's genuine. We can't, and we're not good at faking it. And I think that, you can hear the sort of excitement in our voices, just talking about something that's going to be 18 months away, and it will be absolutely so much fun. The venue's amazing, the place that it's been held's amazing. Our club is in the position. Who knows what next season will bring, but our club it's Rangers again, isn't it? It feels like our club again.
Yes.
And I can't think of a better way to celebrate it than to be there among thousands of like-minded people in the sunshine. Let's not take a copter to the Grand Canyon and have the biggest bouncy in recorded history in the middle of the Grand Canyon.
Now you're talking. And just to make it a wee bit more appealing, I'm just going to shave 2 months off of David's timeline there. We're just a shade over 16 months to go. So it's
Get saving. Closer. Get saving.
Exactly. So
also, before in Vegas, if you gamble, they'll give you your drink for free.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Even on the penny slots, haven't you? You've already factored that in.
No, 100%. That's my spending money. So I'm going to do a quick fire round here before we do the wrap up, David. And as quick as you can, what famous person have you met that you wish you hadn't?
Oh, oh God, that's Robbie Coltrane.
Oh, Hagrid.
Very unpleasant man.
Oh dear, I'll need to try and find out a wee bit more about that. You know what? I've got Leo. Leo's off school today, and he's staring at me right now because he's a big Harry Potter fan. So
well, that was what did it. Is I saw him one time, and it was a couple of kids ran up to him and were going Hagrid, and he was like, well, I can't say the words he told them, but they weren't very nice words, and I was like, oh, for God's sake, mate, if you're going to star and take the money for being in a children's film, you might have to expect that children think you are the character. And I just thought that was a bit offside.
Oh dear. So I think you maybe answered this a wee bit earlier in the conversation that we had today, but knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Brace yourself. I think it's good. It'll be all right in the end, but it's going to get wild for a bit. No, I think just God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth because you're meant to listen twice as much as you talk, and I think that would have been a good lesson for him.
Nice one. So I know you're a big music fan. So Boyzone or One Direction?
I'd need to say Boyzone because I don't honestly think I've ever heard a One Direction song. And the only Boyzone one I can think of right enough is the Osmond Brothers
cover version.
And that really that's more the Osmond Brothers who deserve the credit for that. Actually, funny you're saying that. See the other night, Crazy Horses by the Osmonds came on. What a great song that is! I'd absolutely forgotten what an amazing tune that is. But so I'd probably need to say Boyzone. Plus, a member of Boyzone's been playing centre half for Celtic this year, and that's been funny.
Even better. Yeah, exactly. Even better. Well, I know that my niece Chloe and Leo will be a wee bit disappointed you never picked One Direction, but we can move on. What do you think of people with tattoos?
I know you've got tattoos, and I don't have any tattoos. So I think that this is an elaborate landmine that's been placed in front of me, Gary. What I will say is that it looks as though I'm about to join the ranks of the tattooey people because I promised that if Steven Gerrard won a league title for Rangers, I would get 55 tattooed on my person. So I'm going to stick to that, and hopefully that tattoo will be getting arranged ASAP.
Shortly, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Great stuff. Last one on the quick fire round. If you could change your name to anything, what would it be?
I'd like. See, I don't think I'm cool enough to carry a fantastically cool name. Like Sebastian Rickenbacker or something like that. I don't think I've got the personality for that. So I thought Stuart was a cool name. I'd probably Stuart Edgar. I'd take that. Nice,
great stuff. So just in wrapping up here, David, the podcast has been going for, as we'd mentioned there, the majority of the Barron spell or the banter years for the club, and we're now definitely on the way out of that. Not where we need to be by any manner of means, but certainly on a more solid footing. When we win the 55th title here, hopefully next month, how, if at all, do you think that changes your focus for Heart and Hand and the media work that you're doing going forward?
I think that, from our point of view, that as a support, it will calm us down a wee bit, because I think that we're all on edge and have been, and that's just because we've had so many disappointments that it's impossible not to. You walk around kind of as if you're in the wall at a free kick, don't you, covering your bits because you're fearing the next kick there. So I think as a support, we'll calm down a wee bit. On Heart and Hand, it probably means that we will be able to start looking at the period you spoke about, because we always felt it was too raw, and I always thought that once we've got that title back and we hear the Champions League music at Ibrox again, that'll be the time. So it'll have that effect in the media, and you're seeing it already with the way that the opposition are being collapsing, and the fact that Celtic will have a new chief executive. There's going to be a huge change in the Scottish media. There is, because what has been the case, and to be fair to them, much as none of us like them, they built that for themselves. They did put themselves in a position where they had the media on the end of a string, and that will change over the next few years, and Rangers can assert themselves again in a proper position, because they can dismiss you when you're losing and you complain about things, I think, because they can just say, oh, it's sour grapes.
Yeah.
But when we are back where we belong, Scotland's premier club, they won't be able to do that. And I think you will start to see a few people that have been basically inserted into certain people's backsides. I think you'll see them run for cover a wee bit when it breaks down. And I think, over and above what Rangers have done this season, I think you would need to be blind not to see that they are breaking down, that all the things that they've had it too easy for too long, and they can't handle it now. And I think we're seeing that now.
Yeah, bad winners and bad losers, it would appear.
Yes.
Yeah. So how can we find you, any of our listeners? How can they get a hold of you?
If you go to our website, heartandhand.co.uk, if you want to sign up to listen to the content, then go to patreon.com/heartandhand. And I'm on Twitter at IbroxRocks. So that's the way I'm on there most days. It's just me that runs the account, so it's me you're chatting to. And if you like pictures of dogs, that's a good account to follow, because I'm partial to sharing, as you know, Gary, I'm partial to sending you photos of my mutts and saying, hey, look, they did something cute, which I know gets annoying, but I don't care.
That's your jam. I love it.
That's my babies.
David, I cannot thank you enough, my friend, for being on the show today. Hopefully this won't be the last time that we get you on. So until next time, take care. Thanks again, and all the very, very best.
Thanks, Gary. Pleasure to talk to you. And as I say, hello to everybody at the Calgary RSC. Hopefully it'll only be the 16th month and we'll all meet up again.
Perfect. Bang on. Cheers.